Hello guys, welcome to Scion What Ifs. So in this video, we will see what if Goku fused with every Z fighter permanently. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1, Birth of the One. The sky cracked like an egg. Not the slow spiderweb of lightning during a storm, but a literal fracture in reality itself. Massive black tendrils snaked through the breach, probing, searching, hungry. Goku felt it before he saw it. The sensation crawled up his spine as he trained in the mountains, a disturbance so profound it made his Scion blood run cold. "What the?" he whispered, shielding his eyes against the sudden darkness spreading across the horizon. He'd felt many evil presences before, but this was different. This wasn't power. This was absence. His phone buzzed in his pocket, something Bulma had insisted he carry. He fumbled with the device, still not fully comfortable with the technology. Kakarot. Vegeta's voice barked through the speaker. "Are you feeling this?" "Yeah," Goku answered, his voice uncharacteristically serious. "Meet at the lookout. I'm calling everyone." Within the hour, they had assembled. The full roster of Earth's defenders stood in a grim circle atop Den's lookout, Vegeta with arms crossed and jaw set, Piccolo's cape billowing in the wind, Gohan in his glasses, having abandoned a university lecture mid-sentence, Krillin nervously cracking his knuckles, Tien silently observing with all three eyes, Yamcha trying to look confident despite being outclassed, Android 18 standing protectively near her husband, even future Trunks, who'd mysteriously appeared through a time portal. Just moments ago, claiming something catastrophic had pulled him across timelines. "It's getting worse," Den said, his youthful face lined with worry as he gazed toward the growing fracture in the sky. "Whatever's coming through isn't just powerful, it's consuming reality itself." Whis appeared in a flash of light, his usual smile replaced with a grim line. "I see you've all noticed our visitors. What are they?" Gohan asked, his scholar's mind already trying to categorize the threat. "They're called Void Lords," Whis replied. "Ancient entities that consume universes. They exist outside normal reality and leave nothing behind. Not destruction, absence. So we fight," Vegeta said, punching his fist into his palm. "We've faced universe-level threats before." Whis shook his head. "Not like this. They don't just destroy, they erase. Even the Dragon Balls can't restore what never existed." A smaller crack appeared directly above the lookout, causing everyone to tense. Through it emerged a humanoid figure with skin like polished obsidian. White eyes surveyed them with clinical detachment. "Subjects of Universe 7, the figure announced in a voice that seemed to bypass their ears and speak directly to their minds. "I am Commander Null of the Void Vanguard. Your universe has been selected for consumption. Resistance is..." Vegeta didn't let him finish. With a roar, he transformed into Super Saiyan Blue and launched himself at the creature. His fist connected with Null's face, and passed right through. Null didn't counterattack. He simply observed as Vegeta's momentum carried him through what should have been a solid body. "Fascinating," Null said. "Your energy patterns are unusually developed for this universe stage." Goku joined Vegeta, powering up to his Ultra Instinct form, silver aura blazing. "We won't let you take our universe." Together, they unleashed a barrage of attacks. Punches, kicks, energy blasts, all passing through Null as if he were a hologram. The commander observed with detached curiosity, making no move to defend or attack. "Physical manifestation achieved," Null finally said, and suddenly his hand caught Goku's fist mid-punch. "Combat analysis complete." The counterattack came without warning. One moment Null was standing still, the next, both Scions were embedded in the lookout floor, their transformations flickering out like candles in a hurricane. "Goku!" Krillin shouted, rushing forward with the others. What followed was a massacre. The Z fighters attacked with everything they had, Kamehameha waves, special beam cannons, destructo discs, final flashes, all either passing through Null or being absorbed with minimal effect. Null moved with impossible speed, not so much fighting as conducting an experiment, testing their capabilities with clinical efficiency. 5 minutes later, Earth's mightiest warriors lay broken across the cracked tiles of the lookout. Only Whis remained standing, his staff held defensively. "You're not engaging," Null observed. "Wise. You recognize the futility." "I recognize a scout when I see one," Whis replied. "You're not here to consume. You're here to assess." Null inclined his head. "Correct. The Harbinger approaches. What exists here will soon cease. Prepare accordingly." With that, he vanished back through the crack, which sealed behind him. Dend moved quickly among the fallen fighters, his healing powers working overtime. As they recovered, the gravity of their situation became clear. They had just faced what was essentially a scout and been utterly defeated. "We're screwed," Yamcha vocalized what everyone was thinking. "There has to be a way," Gohan insisted, glasses cracked from the battle. "There's always a way." Whis tapped his staff on the ground, drawing their attention. "There might be one possibility, but the cost." He shook his head. "Whatever it is, we'll pay it," Goku said, sitting up with a wince. "We always do." "Not like this," Whis whispered. With a wave of his staff, he transported them all to Beerus's planet, where the god of destruction was watching the unfolding crisis with rare seriousness. "So they finally found us," Beerus growled, ears twitching irritably. "I told the Grand Priest this sector wasn't hidden well enough." "Lord Beerus," Whis said formally, "I believe the convergence may be our only option." The air around them seemed to freeze. Beerus's eyes widened, his perpetual smirk vanishing. "You can't be serious. That technique has been forbidden since the last void incursion," Whis finished. "Yes. What's the convergence?" Piccolo asked, always the first to cut to the chase. Beerus and Whis exchanged looks before the angel sighed. "It's not like your pot-era fusion or the fusion dance. Those are temporary, limited mergers. The convergence is permanent. Complete. It would combine all of you, your powers, skills, memories, personalities, into a single being." The silence that followed was deafening. "All of us?" Krillin finally asked. "As in, we'd cease to exist as individuals. You would exist as parts of a greater whole," Whis clarified. "Your consciousness would contribute to a new being, one with the combined power of every Z fighter." "That's insane," Tien said. "We'd just disappear." "No, you wouldn't disappear," Beerus snapped. "You'd become something else. Something more. The only being potentially powerful enough to face the Void Lords." Future Trunks stepped forward. "That's why I was pulled here. In my timeline, they've already consumed half the universe. Nothing stopped them, not even combining the powers of all the gods of destruction. But if we fuse," Gohan said slowly, "what happens to our families? Our lives?" The question hung heavy in the air. Goku thought of Chi-Chi and Goten. Vegeta's face darkened as images of Bulma and little Bulla flashed through his mind. Krillin glanced at 18, thinking of their daughter Marin. "They survive," Whis said softly. "In a universe that continues to exist." A tremor ran through reality itself, causing even Beerus's planet to shudder. Through a new tear in the sky, they could see distant galaxies blinking out one by one. "It's starting already," Beerus growled. "The Harbinger must be closer than we thought." "How long do we have?" Piccolo asked. "Hours, maybe," Whis replied. "The convergence ritual takes time to prepare." "Then we should start," Goku said, looking around at his friends. "If there's no other way, hold on," Kakarot. Vegeta interrupted. "We're talking about erasing ourselves from existence. There has to be another option." "There isn't," Future Trunks said grimly. I've seen what happens if we fail. The debate raged for precious minutes. Arguments for, against, alternatives proposed and dismissed. Through it all, the cracks in reality grew wider, the distant screams of dying stars reaching even Beerus's isolated world. Enough! Beerus shouted, his destruction energy flaring. While you argue, your universe dies. Decide now or I'll destroy you myself to spare you watching everyone you love be consumed. The ultimatum hung in the air. One by one, the Z fighters looked at each other, decades of friendship, rivalry, and shared battles passing between them in silent communication. I'll do it, Goku said finally. Chi-Chi will understand. She always has. If Kakarot's in, I won't be outdone, Vegeta growled, though his voice lacked its usual edge. For Videl and Pan, Gohan nodded. For the Earth, Piccolo added. One by one, they agreed, some with tears in their eyes, others with grim determination. Very well, Whis said solemnly. But first, you should say your goodbyes. Capsule Corp buzzed with frantic activity as Bulma tried to make sense of the readings on her monitors. The fabric of reality itself was coming apart, and no amount of genius or technology seemed able to explain it, until the Z fighters appeared in her lab. The goodbyes were heartbreaking. Vegeta held Bulma longer than anyone had ever seen, whispering something that made her sob and punch his chest weakly before kissing him with desperate intensity. He knelt before Bulma, trying to explain to a 4-year-old why Daddy wouldn't be coming home as himself. Trunks stood stoically, trying to be strong like his father while tears streamed down his face. You better not completely disappear in there, Bulma said fiercely, pointing at Vegeta's chest. Whoever comes out of this fusion better have some of your stubbornness, or I'll never forgive you. At the Sun household, Chi-Chi didn't scream or faint as everyone expected. She simply nodded, her face a mask of composed grief as Goku tried to explain. It's always something, isn't it? She said softly. All these years, I've shared you with the universe. I guess now the universe needs all of you. Goten hugged his father fiercely. Will you remember us? After? Parts of me will, Goku said, ruffling his son's hair. The best parts. Similar scenes played out across Earth. Krillin holding 18 and Marin in a group hug. Tien saying stoic goodbyes to Kaiotsu. Yamcha calling everyone he cared about. Master Roshi giving final words of wisdom to his students. Through tears and promises, one thing became clear, whatever emerged from the convergence would carry the legacy of them all, fighting for everything they were leaving behind. Back on Beerus's planet, Whis had prepared the ritual site. A complex array of glowing symbols covered the ground, ancient writing no human had ever seen pulsing with ethereal light. The Grand Priest should be here, Beerus muttered, pacing nervously. As if summoned by the words, reality parted, and the diminutive but immensely powerful Father of all angels appeared, accompanied by several supreme Kais. This is most irregular, the Grand Priest said, his childlike voice belying his cosmic authority. The convergence has not been performed in 12 billion years. But you'll allow it? Whis asked. The Void Lords threaten all existence. Desperate measures are justified. The Grand Priest surveyed the Z fighters. You understand what you're sacrificing? Your individual existence cannot be restored, not by Dragon Balls, not by any power in this universe. They nodded, resolve hardening. Then let us begin, the Grand Priest said. The Z fighters took their positions within the glowing array, Goku, Vegeta, Gohan, Piccolo, Krillin, Tien, Yamcha, future Trunks, Android 18, even Majin Buu who had arrived late but insisted on joining. Focus on what defines you, Whis instructed. Your core self. Your fighting spirit. Your reason for protecting this universe. Energy began to swirl around them, not the familiar key they'd manipulated all their lives, but something more fundamental, the cosmic energy that defined existence itself. It's starting, the Grand Priest announced. Once begun, it cannot be stopped. The Z fighters began to glow, their outlines blurring. Goku felt his consciousness stretching, touching minds he recognized, Vegeta's fierce pride, Gohan's intellectual determination, Piccolo's wisdom, Krillin's boundless heart. Kakarot. Vegeta's voice cut through the swirling energies. If your idiotic personality dominates this fusion, I'll never forgive you. Goku's laugh was the last individual sound any of them made. The light intensified, drawing them together like galaxies colliding in slow motion. Their physical forms dissolved into pure energy, memories and personalities mixing like streams joining a river. Pain gave way to confusion, then wonder, then something entirely new. For an eternal moment, they were everywhere and nowhere, individual consciousness fragmenting and recombining in patterns too complex for any single mind to comprehend. They were Goku remembering his first meeting with Bulma, they were Vegeta feeling pride watching Trunks grow strong, they were Piccolo sacrificing himself for Gohan, they were every moment of triumph and failure, love and rage, hope and despair that had defined their lives. Then, with a thunderclap that shook the foundations of reality, the light collapsed inward. Where 10 warriors had stood, now there was only one. The being opened its eyes, eyes that shifted color constantly, reflecting the souls within. Its body was perfectly proportioned, neither Goku's lanky frame nor Vegeta's compact muscle, but something in between. Hair that spiked upward like a Super Saiyan but remained black with streaks of color that changed with its mood. Clothing that somehow incorporated elements from each fighter, Piccolo's cape, Goku's GI style, Vegeta's armor aesthetics, all merged into a seamless whole. The being blinked, then looked at its hands in wonder. It started, voice a harmonic blend of all their voices before settling into something unique. I am. Names flashed through its mind, Goku, Vegeta, Gohan, Piccolo, all the others, but none fit. It wasn't them individually. It was what they had become together. Omega, it finally said. I am Omega. Beerus approached cautiously. Do you remember who you were? I remember everything, Omega replied. I remember being born as Kakarot on planet Vegeta. I remember watching Frieza destroy my homeworld through the eyes of a prince. I remember growing up as the son of the world's savior while also being that savior. I remember being a Namekian, a human, an android. A smile crossed its face. I am all of them, and something more. The Grand Priest circled Omega, studying the being with intense curiosity. Fascinating. The integration appears complete. But your power. As if on cue, reality tore open again. Commander Null stepped through once more, this time flanked by a dozen void soldiers, humanoid shapes of deepest black with stars visible through their translucent forms. The subjects attempt adaptation, Null observed. Unexpected. The Harbinger will be interested in this development. Omega turned to face the invaders, the movement smooth and decisive. You shouldn't have come back so soon. I'm still getting used to this. Your energy signature has changed, Null noted. Consolidation of multiple sources. Inefficient but intriguing. Without warning, Null attacked, moving faster than even Ultra Instinct Goku had been able to track. But this time, his fist didn't connect. Omega moved with impossible grace, sidestepping the blow while simultaneously analyzing the opponent with Piccolo's tactical mind and Vegeta's combat experience. You're phasing in and out of our reality, Omega observed. That's why physical attacks didn't work before. But I can sense the pattern now. The fight that followed was unlike anything the watching deities had ever seen. Omega didn't just battle, they flowed, adapting with each exchange. When Null phased out of reality, Omega's hands glowed with a technique combining spirit control, God Ki, and android energy manipulation, creating attacks that followed Null across dimensional boundaries. The Void soldiers joined the fray, but Omega moved with the perfect economy of movement, Tien's precision, 18's efficiency, Goku's instinct, and Vegeta's ruthlessness all working in concert. They didn't waste motion or energy, each action flowing perfectly into the next. Impossible, Null said as Omega landed the first solid hit against him, cracking the obsidian surface of his face. Your adaptation rate exceeds parameters. I'm just getting started, Omega replied, and their aura flared, not the familiar colors of Scion transformations, but something new. A prismatic energy that contained facets of every technique they had ever learned. The battle intensified. Null called for reinforcements, and dozens more void soldiers poured through the growing rift. Omega fought them all, moving with increasing confidence as internal instincts aligned. When surrounded, they unleashed a technique that combined Piccolo's Hellzone Grenade with Vegeta's Final Flash and Goku's Spirit Bomb, a sphere of destructive energy that split into hundreds of guided projectiles, each homing in on the dimensional frequency of the void entities. Void soldiers began to fall, their bodies crumbling into cosmic dust. Retreat, Null ordered, genuine concern in his voice for the first time. The Harbinger must be informed. But Omega wouldn't allow it. Drawing on instant transmission, they appeared directly in Null's path. You came to our universe, Omega said, eyes blazing with the combined determination of every Z fighter. You threatened our home. Their hand shot forward, plunging directly into Null's chest, finding the core of his being through sheer force of will. This is our answer. With a twist of their wrist, Omega extracted something from Null's chest, a compressed point of anti-light that writhed between their fingers. Impossible, Null gasped, his body already dissolving. You can't, I can, Omega replied. Because I understand what you are now. The remaining void soldiers retreated in disarray, the rift sealing behind them as Omega crushed Null's core between their fingers. Silence fell across Beerus's planet. The god of destruction, the angels, and the Supreme Kai stared in shock at what they had just witnessed. Well, Beerus finally said, that was unexpected. Omega turned to them, the prismatic aura fading. For a moment, the beings seemed to flicker, different faces and expressions passing across their features as internal personalities adjusted. They'll be back, Omega said. Stronger next time. Null was just testing us. How do you know? Whis asked. I can feel it, Omega replied, tapping their temple. Piccolo's intuition, Gohan's analysis, Vegeta's strategic mind, they're all telling me the same thing. This was just the beginning. The Grand Priest approached. You've exceeded our expectations, but the real test is yet to come. The Void Lords won't send scouts next time. They'll send destroyers. Omega nodded, then winced as a wave of disorientation passed through them. I need to see them. See who? Beerus asked. My family, Omega replied, then frowned. Families. All of them. I need to know they're safe. Whis understood immediately. The integration is still stabilizing. Your composite memories are creating emotional feedback. I promised Chi-Chi I'd come back, Omega said, then shook their head. No, Goku promised that. But I remember making the promise. I remember all their faces. Bulma, Videl, Pan, Marin. I need to see them. It may be difficult for them, the Grand Priest warned. You are not who they lost. But parts of me are, Omega insisted. Please. The deities exchanged looks before Whis sighed. Very well. But first, you should rest. The convergence takes a toll, even on a being of your capabilities. Omega nodded, suddenly aware of the bone-deep fatigue permeating their body. Merging 10 lifetimes of memories and power had costs, it seemed. Tomorrow then, they agreed, looking up at the sky where the rift had been. They'll give us that much time, at least. As Omega rested in a chamber prepared by Whis, their dreams were a kaleidoscope of memories, Goku's childhood on Mount Paozu, Vegeta's harsh training under Frieza, Piccolo's loneliness, Gohan's studies, Krillin's monastery days. 10 lifetimes playing simultaneously, gradually finding patterns and connections. By morning, Omega had found a fragile equilibrium. The personalities weren't fighting for control so much as contributing aspects to the whole. Goku's optimism balanced Vegeta's pragmatism. Piccolo's wisdom tempered Gohan's intellectual curiosity. Krillin's compassion softened 18's analytical detachment. When Omega emerged, there was a new steadiness to their movements, a certainty that hadn't been there before. "I'm ready," they announced to Whis. "Take me to Earth." Capsule Corporation had become the de facto crisis center. Bulma, Dr. Brief, and every scientist they could gather worked frantically to monitor the deteriorating fabric of reality. Chi-Chi, Videl, and the other families had gathered there as well, drawing comfort from each other's company in the face of uncertainty. When Whis appeared with Omega, the room fell silent. Bulma approached first, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding her emotional turmoil. "So this is, all of you?" Omega nodded, suddenly uncertain. They carried Vegeta's memories of this woman, the love, the arguments, the quiet moments, but also Goku's friendly affection for her, Piccolo's respectful distance, Krillin's longtime friendship. The competing emotional contexts were overwhelming. Yes, they managed. And no. I'm something new, but made from everything they were. Chi-Chi stepped forward next, her eyes searching Omega's face for any trace of her husband. "Goku? Are you in there?" Omega felt a pang of Goku's love for this woman, so pure and simple despite his complicated life. "Part of me is, Chi-Chi, the part that always came back to you, no matter what." "And Gohan?" Videl asked, holding Pan's hand tightly. "Here too," Omega said, and their expression softened into something reminiscent of Gohan's gentle smile. "I remember the day Pan was born. I've never felt prouder." One by one, they approached, Bulma, Chi-Chi, Videl, 18 holding Marin's hand, Master Roshi, everyone who had loved the individual warriors now merged into one being. Each looking for signs of the person they had lost. Pan, only 5 years old, broke away from Videl and approached Omega directly. "You're not my daddy," she said with a child's blunt honesty. "But you feel like him." Omega knelt down. "That's exactly right. I'm not just your daddy, but he's a big part of who I am." The little girl considered this, then asked, "Do you know how to fly?" A laugh escaped Omega, Gohan's laugh. "Yes, I do." "Can you show me?" Pan asked. The simple request cut through the tension. Omega gently lifted off the ground, floating a few feet up with Pan clapping in delight. The ice broken, questions poured out. Could Omega access all their techniques? Yes, and combine them in ways they were still discovering. Did they have all the memories? Yes, though some were clearer than others. Were they still them? Yes and no, they remembered being them, but were becoming someone new. Finally, Bulma asked the question they had all been avoiding. Can it be reversed? Can we get them back? The room fell silent again. Omega met her gaze steadily, drawing on Vegeta's courage to deliver hard truths. No. This is permanent. The individuals you knew, they sacrificed themselves to become me. To give me the power to fight what's coming. Tears welled in Bulma's eyes, but she nodded, the scientist in her understanding even as the wife rebelled against the reality. Then you better make it worth it, she said fiercely. You better save this universe, or I'll never forgive any of you. I intend to, Omega promised. The emotional reunion was interrupted by alarms blaring throughout the compound. Bulma rushed to her monitors, face paling. It's happening again, she said. Bigger this time. Multiple breaches across the planet. Omega moved to her side, studying the readings with Gohan's scientific understanding and 18's data processing speed. They're testing our defenses, probing for weaknesses. What do we do? Bulma asked. Omega straightened, and for a moment, everyone saw flashes of the warriors they had known, Goku's determined stance, Vegeta's proud tilt of the chin, Piccolo's strategic focus. I go meet them, Omega said simply. And show them why they should have stayed away from our home. Without another word, Omega vanished, using instant transmission to appear at the largest breach, a gaping wound in reality hanging over West City. Through it poured dozens of void soldiers, led by a larger entity whose form seemed to bend light around it unnaturally. "I am Executor Vex," the entity announced to the panicking city below. "This territory is claimed for consumption. Surrender your existential energy and your transition will be painless." "That's not happening," Omega called, hovering before the breach. Vex turned, studying Omega with gleaming white eyes. "The anomaly Commander Null reported. Fascinating. Your composite structure shouldn't be stable." "Come test how stable I am," Omega challenged. The battle that followed leveled 3 city blocks despite Omega's best efforts to draw the fighting away from civilians. Vex was faster than Null, stronger, and capable of manipulating void energy in ways that seemed to ignore physics entirely. But Omega was rapidly learning to access the full spectrum of their combined abilities. When Vex launched attacks that phased through conventional matter, Omega countered with combinations never before seen, Spirit Bomb energy guided by Piccolo's precision and amplified by Android 18's unlimited energy reserves. When Vex tried to open micro-breaches behind Omega for sneak attacks, Tien's heightened awareness combined with instant transmission allowed for perfect counters. The turning point came when Omega accessed Gohan's hidden rage and Majin Buu's reality warping abilities simultaneously. The combination created a localized field where the normal rules of physics reasserted themselves fully, temporarily anchoring Vex in conventional reality. That moment of vulnerability was all Omega needed. Drawing on the combined strength of every Z fighter, they delivered a punch that connected with Vex's core, shattering it instantly. The remaining void soldiers retreated, the breach sealing behind them. But Omega took no satisfaction in the victory. As the dust settled over the damaged city, they saw the cost: injured civilians, destroyed buildings, fear on the faces of those they had sworn to protect. Rescue efforts took hours, with Omega moving faster than the eye could follow to pull survivors from rubble, using Piccolo's materialization technique to create emergency medical supplies, and Gohan's knowledge to perform emergency first aid. When Bulma arrived with emergency response teams, she found Omega sitting amid the rubble, holding a small child who had lost her parents in the attack. "They're getting stronger," Omega said without looking up. "And they're learning from each battle. This was just another test." "Then we need to stop reacting and start acting," Bulma replied. "You said you could sense them now. Can you find where they're coming from?" Omega's head snapped up, eyes widening with sudden understanding. "Of course. Goku's ability to sense ki, combined with Piccolo's astral projection and 18th scanning capabilities." Standing, they gently handed the child to a paramedic, then closed their eyes in concentration. Their consciousness expanded outward, beyond Earth, beyond the solar system, stretching across the galaxy and beyond. Following the faint traces of anti-light that marked the Void Lord's path. The vision that greeted them was horrifying. A massive entity, larger than a solar system, moving through the darkness between galaxies. The Harbinger, surrounded by an armada of void ships. And it was headed directly for Earth. Omega's eyes snapped open. 3 days, they said grimly. "We have 3 days before the main force arrives." "What can we do in 3 days?" Bulma asked. Omega looked at their hands, feeling the power thrumming through their veins, immense, but still not enough. Not for what was coming. "Train," they said simply. "Push these powers to their limits. Find combinations we haven't tried yet." "Where?" Bulma asked. "The hyperbolic time chamber was destroyed in the last crisis." Omega smiled, Goku's smile, full of reckless confidence. "I know a place where time moves differently. But I'll need help getting there." The sacred world of the Kais existed outside normal spacetime, a realm where a day might equal years elsewhere. With the Supreme Kai's reluctant permission, Omega secluded themselves on a remote plateau to explore the full depths of their capabilities. What followed was the most intense training regimen ever undertaken by any warrior. Omega pushed their body beyond conventional limits, drawing on Vegeta's relentless drive, Goku's boundless potential, Piccolo's meditation techniques, and Gohan's analytical approach. They discovered that their body could access all the transformations, Super Saiyan, Namekian giant form, Kaioken, even Majin Buu's transmutation abilities, but the real power came from synergizing them in ways their separate components never could. Super Saiyan combined with Piccolo's energy conservation. Kaioken enhanced by Android 18's unlimited stamina to eliminate the typical drawbacks. Potara-style power multiplication applied to fusion dance techniques. By the second day, equivalent to several months in the special dimension, Omega had developed entirely new techniques, the Void Lance, which combined Gohan's Masenko with Vegeta's Gallic Gun, specifically calibrated to damage void entities, the Harmony Sphere, a defensive technique that synthesized Piccolo's barrier abilities with Majin Buu's regeneration. The Supreme Kai observed from a distance, both awed and disturbed by what he was witnessing. The convergence was forbidden for good reason, he murmured to Elder Kai. Such power in one being. Better this than the alternative, Elder Kai replied, gesturing toward the sky where, even in this sacred realm, tiny fractures were beginning to appear. The void consumes everything if left unchecked. On the final day, as Omega perfected their ultimate technique, a combination of Spirit Bomb, Final Flash, and Special Beam Cannon designed to pierce dimensional barriers, the Supreme Kai approached. It's time, he said. The Harbinger has reached the outer solar system. Earth has hours at most. Omega nodded, rising from their meditation position. The being that stood before the Supreme Kai barely resembled the fusion that had arrived days earlier. Their aura had stabilized into a prismatic glow that didn't flare wildly but instead moved like a liquid around their body, responding to their thoughts rather than their emotions. I'm ready, Omega said, and their voice carried the harmonics of all 10 warriors while somehow remaining singularly their own. Take me to them. Earth's sky had turned black with overlapping breaches when Omega returned. The largest hung directly over Capsule Corp, a gaping wound in reality through which an enormous shape was slowly emerging. The Harbinger didn't fully manifest in conventional space. What appeared was merely an avatar, a towering humanoid figure with skin like the void between stars, crowned with horns that seemed to bend reality around them. It stood 100 feet tall, dwarfing the buildings beneath it. Universe 7, it spoke, its voice reverberating in the minds of everyone on the planet. Your resistance is noted. Impressive but futile. Your existential energy will sustain us. Omega appeared between the Harbinger and Capsule Corp, where Earth's remaining defenders had gathered. Bulma had created a barrier using technology reverse-engineered from studying the breach energy, but it was already failing under the Harbinger's passive influence. You're not taking this universe, Omega stated, their voice carrying despite its normal volume. Or any other, ever again. The Harbinger's featureless face turned toward Omega, studying them with what might have been curiosity. An anomaly. A convergence entity. We have not witnessed such since the third universal cycle. Then let me show you what you've been missing, Omega replied, and attacked. The battle that followed would be spoken of for generations, if any survived to tell the tale. Omega moved with impossible speed and precision, their prismatic aura flaring as they unleashed combinations of techniques no single warrior could have mastered. The Harbinger responded with devastating power, each movement tearing further at the fabric of reality. Buildings crumbled. The earth cracked. The very air seemed to burn where their energies clashed. Despite their training, despite their power, Omega found themselves outmatched. The Harbinger wasn't just stronger, it existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, making it impossible to land a definitive blow. Your effort is valiant, the Harbinger acknowledged as it batted Omega through a skyscraper. But this universe's cycle ends now. Bleeding and battered, Omega pulled themselves from the rubble. Inside their mind, the merged consciousness of the Z fighters rallied, each contributing to a desperate plan. Not while I'm still standing, Omega declared, and their aura changed, shifting from prismatic light to something darker, deeper. Drawing on Gohan's academic knowledge of dimensional theory, Piccolo's understanding of life force, Vegeta's tactical genius, and Goku's boundless potential, Omega began a technique never before attempted. They cupped their hands at their side, the familiar stance of the Kamehameha, but what gathered there wasn't blue energy. It was a singularity, a point where dimensions touched, feeding on Omega's own life force. "What is this?" the Harbinger demanded, sensing the danger too late. "The end," Omega replied simply, and unleashed the convergence wave. The attack didn't travel through space, it tore through it, creating a channel directly between dimensions. When it struck the Harbinger, the entity didn't explode or disintegrate, it folded, collapsing inward as the attack pulled it back through the breach from which it had emerged. The Harbinger's scream echoed across dimensions as it was dragged back into the void, but with a final surge of power, it reached out, not to attack Omega, but to grab them. "If we perish, you perish with us," it declared, pulling Omega toward the collapsing breach. For a moment, Omega struggled against the immense gravitational force. Then, looking back at Earth, at the faces of those watching in horror, they made their decision. Using instant transmission, they appeared directly before the Harbinger, driving their fist deep into the entity's core. "I accept those terms," Omega said, and pushed forward. Together, Harbinger and Omega vanished into the collapsing breach. There was a moment of blinding light, then silence. The cracks in reality began to heal themselves, the natural order reasserting its dominance. On Earth, those gathered at Capsule Corp stared in disbelief at the now clear sky. "Are they?" Bulma couldn't finish the question. "Gone," Supreme Kai confirmed solemnly. They sacrificed themselves to seal the breach from the other side. Tears flowed freely. Not just for the individual warriors they had lost, but for Omega, the being who had contained them all and chosen to die to save them. As night fell on a universe saved from consumption, few noticed the small pinprick of light that appeared high in the atmosphere. It fell like a meteor, crashing into the mountains miles from West City. In the impact crater lay a figure, battered, wounded, but breathing. Omega opened their eyes, disoriented but alive. "How?" they murmured, trying to make sense of their survival. The answer came in fragmented memories: Majin Buu's regenerative abilities, Piccolo's severed limb regrowth, Goku's survival instinct, all working together at the moment of dimensional collapse to preserve their existence. Slowly, painfully, Omega pulled themselves to their feet. They were different now, the experience had changed them fundamentally. The personalities within had fused even more completely in the crucible of near-destruction. They looked toward the distant lights of West City, feeling the pull of the lives connected to them there, families, friends, a world saved but forever changed. "Time to go home," Omega said to the night sky, and began the long journey back to those waiting for news of their fate. In the void beyond dimensions, the remnants of the Harbinger drifted in eternal darkness, wounded beyond recovery but not quite destroyed. And deep in the endless abyss, other entities stirred, sensing the new power that had emerged in Universe 7. The battle was over. But the war had just begun. Chapter 2, Mind and Fist. Omega stood at the edge of Capsule Corp's sprawling balcony, watching the sunrise. 3 weeks had passed since the battle with the Harbinger, and Earth was healing. Construction crews worked around the clock to rebuild West City. Bulma's scientists studied the residual energy from the dimensional breaches. Life continued. But inside Omega's mind, chaos reigned. "This is ridiculous," they muttered, pressing their temples. "I defeated a universal threat but can't decide what to eat for breakfast." The problem wasn't simple indecision. It was 10 different preferences fighting for dominance. Goku's consciousness wanted mountains of everything. Vegeta's demanded protein-rich, efficient meals. Piccolo didn't care for food at all. Gohan preferred something balanced with coffee. The internal debate had Omega standing paralyzed before the refrigerator every morning. Bulma emerged onto the balcony, coffee in hand. "Talking to yourself again?" "They won't shut up," Omega sighed. Vegeta wants to train. Goku agrees but wants to train differently. Piccolo thinks we should meditate. Gohan wants to study the breach data. Krillin's worried about how the families are coping. And what does Omega want? Bulma asked. The question stopped them short. I don't know. I'm still figuring that out. Bulma leaned against the railing. 3 weeks had changed her too, new stress lines around her eyes, hair pulled back in a practical ponytail rather than her usual stylish cut. She'd thrown herself into research, both to distract from grief and to prepare for future threats. You need to stop thinking of them as separate people fighting for control, she said. You're not 10 people in one body. You're one person with 10 lifetimes of memories. Easier said than done, Omega replied. Especially when, they froze, eyes widening. A presence had just entered Earth's atmosphere, immense, ancient, and radiating destructive energy that made Beerus seem tame by comparison. What is it? Bulma asked, recognizing the look. It was the same expression Vegeta got when sensing danger. Trouble, Omega said, already moving. Big trouble. Call the others. Get everyone to safety. They launched into the sky, accelerating to supersonic speeds in seconds. The presence was heading toward the wastelands, deliberately avoiding populated areas. Whatever it was, it wanted Omega's attention, not collateral damage. That wasn't reassuring. Omega touched down in the rocky Badlands just as reality split open, not the jagged, violent tears of the Void Lords, but a precise, elegant portal through which stepped a figure that radiated controlled power. He looked humanoid but stood 9 feet tall with obsidian skin etched with golden lines like circuit patterns. His eyes glowed with the same golden light. He wore armor resembling that of a god of destruction but darker, more angular, with symbols Omega didn't recognize. So, the figure said, voice resonating with power, this is the abomination that violated cosmic law. Omega straightened, drawing on Vegeta's pride and Piccolo's dignity. Who are you? I am Cardos, god of destruction from Universe 19. Universe 19. Omega frowned. There are only 12 universes. Now, perhaps. Cardos studied Omega with cold curiosity. Once there were 20. Mine was among the first to fall when balance was disturbed by beings like you. I'm nothing like the Void Lords, Omega said. Aren't you? Cardos circled Omega slowly. Multiple consciousnesses merged into one. Powers combined beyond their natural limits. The difference is only of degree, not kind. Omega felt their internal personalities stirring uneasily. Goku wanted to fight immediately. Vegeta counseled caution against a god of destruction. Piccolo was analyzing every word for hidden meanings. The convergence was performed with the Grand Priest's approval, Omega said carefully. A desperate measure for desperate times. Cardos stopped circling. But the crisis has passed, and still you exist, an unstable fusion of powers never meant to combine. I'm not unstable. The word sounded hollow even to Omega's ears. No. Cardos raised an eyebrow. Tell me, abomination, who am I speaking to right now? Goku? Vegeta? Or the patchwork entity they've become? Anger flared, Vegeta's rage, Piccolo's indignation, Gohan's frustration, all amplifying each other. I am Omega. And I'm not going anywhere. We'll see. Cardos smiled thinly. The Council of Gods has taken notice of your existence. Some believe you should be permitted to live out your natural lifespan as reward for defeating the Harbinger. Others, myself included, see you as a corruption of natural law that must be excised before you become what you fought. You're here to kill me. I'm here to test you, Cardos corrected. To see if my concerns are justified. Without warning, he attacked. Omega barely had time to raise their arms in defense before Cardos's fist connected with their chest. The impact sent them flying backward through 3 mountains before they regained control. Too slow, Cardos called, already behind them. Your components might have dodged that. Another blow, this time to the back of Omega's head, drove them face first into the ground. Omega rolled away just as Cardos's foot smashed the earth where they'd been. This isn't a fair assessment, Omega protested, wiping blood from their mouth. I'm still learning to, enemies won't wait for you to find harmony, Cardos interrupted, launching another attack. Either you are greater than your parts, or you are a failed experiment. Rage bubbled up, mainly Vegeta's influence, and Omega transformed, their hair flashing golden as they accessed Super Saiyan power. The transformation felt different, wilder, as the Saiyan aspects of their fusion temporarily dominated. That's more like it, Cardos grinned, matching Omega's increased speed. The battle intensified. Omega unleashed combinations of techniques, Kamehameha waves guided by Piccolo's precision, physical attacks with Vegeta's technical perfection, but their movements lacked cohesion. Sometimes Goku's instincts took over, sometimes Vegeta's calculation, resulting in jagged, unpredictable fighting that even they couldn't fully control. Cardos, by contrast, moved with flawless efficiency. Every attack was measured, every defense perfectly timed. He fought like someone who had battled for millions of years. You see the problem now? He asked, effortlessly dodging a final flash. Your power is immense but fragmented. You're fighting yourself as much as you're fighting me. Frustration mounted as Omega pushed deeper into their power reserves. Their hair lengthened, approaching Super Saiyan 3. Their muscles bulked up, borrowing from Tien's technique. Their skin took on a purple hue as Majin Buu's influence surfaced. Control yourself, Cardos warned, suddenly serious. Or you'll prove my point. But control was exactly what Omega lacked. The internal personalities were panicking, each trying to take charge in the crisis. Goku wanted to push beyond limits. Vegeta demanded technical perfection. Piccolo urged strategic withdrawal. The conflicting impulses created a chaotic aura around Omega, their form shifting subtly as different aspects temporarily dominated. Enough. Cardos moved too fast to track, appearing directly before Omega. His palm pressed against their chest, golden energy pulsing. Hakai. Destruction energy surged through Omega, not the complete annihilation Beerus could unleash, but a controlled, targeted disruption of their fusion energy. Pain like nothing they had ever experienced, like being torn apart at the atomic level, ripped through Omega's body. They screamed, a sound that contained echoes of all the Z fighters' voices momentarily separated before coalescing again. Cardos stepped back, watching as Omega collapsed to their knees, body smoking and energy fluctuating wildly. As I suspected, he said, his voice now devoid of aggression. The convergence is incomplete. Your personalities remain distinct, competing rather than unifying. Omega struggled to stand, using Piccolo's regenerative abilities to repair the worst damage. You didn't try to kill me. That wasn't my purpose. Cardos folded his arms. Had I wished you dead, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Then what was this about? Omega demanded, anger, mostly Vegeta's, flaring again. To show you and the observing deities what I already knew. Cardos gestured upward, where Omega now sensed multiple godly presences watching from dimensional pockets. You are dangerous, not because you're too powerful, but because you're unstable. With effort, Omega stood straight, drawing on Piccolo's dignity even through the pain. So what happens now? Now, Cardos said, the real test begins. You have 1 month, Omega. 1 month to achieve true integration, to become not a collection of warriors but a single, harmonious entity. And if I fail? Then the Council will authorize your removal before you collapse into a dimensional singularity that makes the Void Lord seem trivial by comparison. Cardos turned away, opening another portal. 1 month. Use it wisely. He paused at the threshold. Oh, and don't think about running. There's nowhere in this universe or any other where you can hide from us. With that, He was gone, leaving Omega alone in the shattered landscape. Bulma's medical bay had never seen a patient quite like Omega. Their vital signs fluctuated wildly, sometimes showing multiple heartbeats, sometimes none at all. Their brainwaves displayed patterns that shouldn't have been compatible with consciousness. "This is bad," Bulma muttered, studying the readouts. "Your fusion energy is destabilizing." Omega lay on the specialized diagnostic bed, transparent patches monitoring their condition. The battle with Cardos had done more than physical damage, it had shaken the foundations of their merged identity. "He barely tried," Omega said softly. "He was just making a point." Whis, who had appeared shortly after Omega's return to Capsule Corp, nodded gravely. "Cardos is among the oldest gods of destruction. He survived the collapse of his universe when the original Void Lords emerged." "You knew him?" Bulma asked. "We've met at cosmic functions," Whis replied with his typical understatement. "He's intense, even by Destroyer standards. But rarely wrong. So I'm really falling apart?" Omega asked, looking at their hands, which occasionally flickered with conflicting auras. "Not physically," Whis explained. "But psychically. The convergence requires harmony among all constituent consciousnesses. Your components are too strong-willed, too distinct. They're resisting complete integration." "Great," Omega muttered, Vegeta's sarcasm evident. "So what's the solution? Group therapy for my split personalities?" "Actually," Whis said thoughtfully, "something like that might help." Before Omega could respond, the door burst open. Chi-Chi stormed in, followed by Videl, Pan, Bulla, and Marin. "We heard what happened," Chi-Chi said, her voice tightly controlled. Are they all right?" The question itself highlighted the problem. No one, not even those closest to them, knew how to relate to Omega, as an individual or as a collection of their lost loved ones. "I'm fine," Omega said, sitting up despite Bulma's protests. "Just got my butt handed to me by a god of destruction." "Wouldn't be the first time," Chi-Chi said with a sad smile, momentarily seeing Goku in Omega's sheepish expression. Little Pan approached the bed, studying Omega with childish directness. "You look different. Your eyes keep changing color." Omega blinked in surprise. Looking in the nearby monitor that displayed their vitals, they saw she was right. Their irises were shifting subtly, sometimes Goku's innocent black, sometimes Vegeta's sharp darkness, sometimes Piccolo's perceptive depth. "That's not good," they admitted. "Why is this happening now?" Bulma asked Whis. "They seemed stable after defeating the Harbinger." "Crisis unifies," Whis explained. "When facing the Void Lords, survival demanded cooperation among the constituent personalities. Now, without that immediate threat, they're reverting to their individual natures." Bulla, showing Vegeta's perceptiveness despite her young age, asked the question everyone was avoiding. "Are they going to disappear? Will my dad be gone forever?" The question hit Omega like a physical blow. Inside their mind, Vegeta's consciousness surged forward, drawn by his daughter's distress. "No, Princess," Omega said, their voice momentarily matching Vegeta's exactly. "I'm still here." The shift was so pronounced that everyone stared in shock. For a moment, Vegeta's expression had completely overtaken Omega's features. "This is worse than I thought," Whis murmured, tapping his staff anxiously. Omega closed their eyes, focusing inward. The mental landscape was chaotic, fragments of personalities competing for dominance, memories overlapping and contradicting. Goku's carefree nature clashed with Vegeta's intensity. Piccolo's wisdom warred with Gohan's academic approach. Even Krillin and Yamcha, whose powers were less prominent in the fusion, contributed emotional patterns that pulled in different directions. "I need to fix this," Omega said, opening their eyes with new determination. Not just to survive, but because this isn't what any of them wanted. They sacrificed themselves to create something new, not this half-existence. "What will you do?" Chi-Chi asked. Omega stood, decision made. I need to go somewhere isolated. Somewhere I can focus on integration without distractions. The Antarctic base, Bulma suggested. We built it to study the original dimensional breaches. It's fully automated, completely isolated. Perfect, Omega nodded. But first. They looked at the families gathered around them, the wives, children, and friends of the warriors now merged into their being. I need to speak with each of you. Privately. What followed were some of the most difficult conversations in Omega's short existence. With each family member, a different personality aspect emerged more strongly, creating moments of connection that were both healing and heartbreaking. With Chi-Chi, they shared Goku's memories of quiet moments between world-saving adventures. With Bulma, they recalled Vegeta's grudging journey from enemy to husband. With Videl, they discussed Gohan's dreams for Pan's future. With each conversation, Omega experienced the full emotional weight of their component personalities' lives. By the time they prepared to leave for Antarctica, something had shifted inside them. The personalities weren't fighting for control quite so aggressively. They'd been acknowledged, respected, given voice. It's a start, Whis said approvingly as he prepared to transport Omega to the remote base. But you have much work ahead. 1 month isn't long to achieve what normally takes years. I'll make it work, Omega replied with Goku's determination and Vegeta's pride. I don't have a choice. The Antarctic facility was state-of-the-art, a testament to Capsule Corp's engineering prowess. Built into the ice itself, its reinforced walls could withstand both extreme weather and extreme power levels. Omega settled into the central chamber, a spherical room designed for energy containment. Here, they could unleash their full power without risk, to themselves or others. Day 1, they said aloud, beginning a log to track their progress. Objective, integration. The first attempt was direct confrontation, creating a mindscape where they could directly address the competing personalities. Sitting in meditation, Omega dove inward, visualizing a space where all aspects of themselves could manifest. The result was chaos. This is pointless, Vegeta's aspect spat, his form ghostly but distinct within the mental construct. We should be training, not playing mind games. Training won't help if we can't work together, Gohan's aspect countered. We need to understand the psychological dynamics at play. Maybe we should just spar. Goku's aspect suggested with characteristic simplicity. That's how I've always figured stuff out. Piccolo's aspect stood apart, arms crossed. This approach is flawed. We're not separate entities to be negotiated with. We're facets of a single consciousness resisting complete merger. The debate continued, circular and frustrating. By the time Omega emerged from meditation, 12 hours had passed, and they'd made zero progress. Day 2, they recorded, voice ragged with frustration. Direct confrontation failed. Trying something else. The second approach focused on physical training, pushing their body to limits that would force cooperation. Omega transformed through various states, combining techniques in increasingly complex ways. Super Saiyan with Piccolo's regeneration. Kaioken with Android 18's energy regulation. Tien's multiform technique with Gohan's scholarly precision. The power was immense but unstable. Each combination worked briefly before collapsing as different aspects seized control. After destroying half the training facility with an uncontrolled energy discharge, Omega had to admit defeat. Day 5, they reported, exhaustion evident. Physical approach also failing. Running out of ideas. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. Sitting amid the rubble of another failed training session, Omega found themselves absent-mindedly humming a lullaby, one Chi-Chi used to sing to Goten. The simple melody triggered cascading memories across multiple personalities, Vegeta awkwardly singing Saiyan battle hymns to baby Trunks, Krillin teaching Marin playground songs, even Piccolo recalling mysterious Namekian chants from his childhood. Music. Harmony. Different notes creating something greater than themselves. That's it, Omega whispered, a new approach crystallizing. We've been thinking about this all wrong. Rather than trying to force the personalities to cooperate or compete, Omega began treating them as instruments in an orchestra, each with their own timbre and strength, but capable of creating harmony when properly conducted. They constructed mental exercises based on this metaphor. Instead of pushing personalities down or letting one dominate, they practiced bringing them forward at appropriate moments, then gently transitioning to another when needed. In battle simulations, they would channel Vegeta's tactical mind for strategy, Goku's instincts for reaction, Piccolo's focus for energy control, not fighting for dominance but flowing from one to another like movements in a symphony. Day 12, Omega recorded, the first hint of optimism in their voice. Progress at last. Integration at approximately 30%. Still unstable under extreme stress, but improving. As the days passed, the approach bore fruit. The visual fluctuations decreased. Their energy signature stabilized. Even their speech patterns became more consistent, no longer jarringly shifting between different personalities' mannerisms. Day 18, they noted. Integration at 65%. Successfully maintained combined state through simulated crisis scenarios. Then came the setback. 3 weeks into training, as Omega pushed deeper into their power reserves, they hit a wall, a fundamental incompatibility between certain aspects that refused to harmonize. Goku's selfless approach to power and Vegeta's self-focused drive. Piccolo's disciplined energy control and Majin Buu's chaotic reality manipulation. The clash sent psychic shockwaves through their system, physically manifesting as their form began to blur around the edges, almost as if they were starting to come apart. Integration stalled at 70%, they gasped into the recorder, fighting to maintain cohesion. Fundamental conflict between core components. For 2 days, Omega struggled simply to maintain what they had achieved, unable to progress further. The deadline loomed, 1 week remaining before Cardoza's return. On the morning of the 3rd day of this plateau, alarms blared throughout the facility. The sensors detected a massive energy signature approaching Earth, not Cardo's, but something equally powerful and far less controlled. Warning, dimensional breach detected. Class X threat incoming. Omega checked the coordinates and felt their blood run cold. The breach was opening directly above West City. Integration would have to wait. Bulma's emergency protocols had improved dramatically since the Void Lord's first attack. Force fields snapped into place around major population centers. Evacuation routes lit up with holographic indicators. The Earth's remaining defenders, Dend, Mr. Satan, for morale if nothing else, and even Master Roshi, assembled at strategic points. But against what emerged from this new breach, such preparation seemed almost quaint. It resembled a void soldier in the same way a tiger resembles a house cat. 20 feet tall with limbs that bent at impossible angles, its body constantly shifting between solid matter and swirling void stuff. 6 eyes arranged in no recognizable pattern tracked movement across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Anomaly detected, it announced in a voice that made windows shatter for miles. Convergence entity location required. Bulma stood on the Capsule Corp roof, surrounded by defensive equipment. What do you want with Omega? The entity's attention fixed on her, its eyes spinning to focus. You know the anomaly. You will provide its location. I don't think so, Bulma replied, activating a device on her wrist. A shield of blue energy surrounded her. And if you're smart, you'll leave before they get here. Resistance noted. The entity extended a limb that elongated like liquid shadow, bypassing Bulma's shield as if it weren't there and wrapping around her throat. Cooperation will be extracted. Put her down. Omega hovered in the air behind the entity, their aura calm and controlled despite the rage building inside them. The journey from Antarctica had taken less than a minute using instant transmission, but seeing Bulma in danger made them wish they'd arrived sooner. The entity released Bulma, turning its full attention to Omega. Convergence entity located. Beginning analysis. Who sent you? Omega demanded. The Void Lords are gone. Void Lords transformed, not destroyed, the entity corrected. I am Seeker. I locate potential threats for Ascended Void. Omega frowned. Ascended Void? What are you talking about? Instead of answering, Seeker attacked, its body dissolving into tendrils of anti-light that struck from multiple angles simultaneously. Omega dodged with fluid grace, their movements no longer showing the jagged transitions between fighting styles. The battle quickly escalated as Seeker demonstrated abilities beyond those of previous void entities. It could phase between dimensions at will, appear in multiple locations simultaneously, and manipulate gravity to crush entire city blocks. Omega responded with increasingly sophisticated combinations. When Seeker phased out of normal space, Omega used Gohan's scholarly knowledge to predict where dimensional weak points would form, then struck with Piccolo's precision and Vegeta's power. Your integration progress, 71.3%, Seeker observed during a momentary pause in the fighting. Insufficient for survival against Ascended Void. We'll see about that, Omega replied, and unleashed a new technique, the Prismatic Lance, a focused beam that contained aspects of every Z fighter's signature energy attack, calibrated to Seeker's unique dimensional frequency. The attack pierced Seeker's defenses, causing it to shriek in pain as its form destabilized. Omega pressed the advantage, moving in close to deliver a combination of strikes targeting the entity's core. But Seeker had one more surprise. As Omega's fist connected with its center mass, tendrils of void energy surged up their arm, burrowing into their mind. Extracting data, Seeker announced. Analyzing convergence process. Pain exploded through Omega's consciousness as Seeker forcibly probed their memories, focusing specifically on the convergence ritual. Worse, the invasion was destabilizing their hard-won integration, pulling individual personalities to the surface in chaotic succession. Get out of my head! Omega roared, their voice shifting between different Z fighters as they struggled to maintain cohesion. Drawing on reserves they didn't know they possessed, Omega turned the connection between them back on Seeker. Instead of fighting the intrusion, they channeled their own consciousness along the tendrils, following them back to Seeker's core. What they found there defied comprehension, a vast network of stolen consciousness fragments, memories and personalities absorbed from countless victims across multiple universes. This wasn't just a scout, it was a repository of stolen minds. Among them, Omega recognized a familiar pattern. No, they gasped, finding traces of the commander they had defeated. You absorbed him. All serve the Ascended Void, Seeker's thoughts replied within the mental landscape. As you will soon, Omega didn't let it finish. Using techniques gleaned from Majin Buu's absorption abilities, they located the core of Seeker's consciousness and attacked it directly, not with energy but with will. You wanted to understand the convergence? Omega said within the mental battlefield. Let me show you. Drawing on the mental harmony they'd been developing, Omega unleashed a psychic attack that mimicked the convergence's integrative power, but twisted to disrupt rather than unify. The technique tore through Seeker's collected consciousness fragments, setting them against each other in cascading chaos. In the physical world, Seeker's body began to convulse, its form losing coherence as its mind collapsed. Critical failure, it announced, voice distorting. Data transmission comp. With a final surge of will, Omega severed Seeker's connection to whatever was receiving its information, then pushed the entity back through the dimensional breach from which it had emerged. The rift sealed behind it, leaving only scattered void matter dissolving in the afternoon sun. Omega descended to the capsule corp roof where Bulma waited, medical team at the ready. But instead of the destabilized mess they expected to be after the mental invasion, Omega felt integrated. The battle had forced a deeper harmony than weeks of controlled training. You're glowing, Bulma observed, pointing to Omega's aura, which had stabilized into a perfect blend of all the Z fighters' energy signatures. Crisis unifies, Omega quoted Whis, smiling faintly. Turns out Cardos did me a favor. Nothing like a real fight to force cooperation. Speaking of which, Bulma said, checking her tablet, we're picking up another dimensional disturbance. Much smaller, more controlled. Omega nodded. That would be Cardo's. Right on schedule. The god of destruction appeared at the same wasteland where they'd first met. He stood with arms crossed, golden lines on his obsidian skin pulsing with energy as Omega approached. You've been busy, Cardos observed. The Seeker was not part of our arrangement. You knew it was coming. I suspected the Void would send scouts. They're nothing if not persistent. Cardos studied Omega with those piercing golden eyes. But that's not why I'm here. Your month is up, abomination. Show me your progress. Omega landed a few paces away, their aura calm and controlled. I prefer Omega to abomination. Names are earned. Cardos uncrossed his arms. Prove you deserve one. Without warning, he attacked, just as fast and powerful as their first encounter. But this time, Omega was ready. They moved with fluid precision, their style no longer a jagged collection of different techniques but a seamless integration of all of them. When they dodged, it was with Goku's instinct guided by Piccolo's strategic mind. When they countered, it was with Vegeta's technical perfection enhanced by Gohan's analytical targeting. Cardos increased the intensity, golden destruction energy wreathing his fists. Better. But still not enough. The battle escalated rapidly, both combatants accelerating to speeds that would have been invisible to normal eyes. They traded blows that shattered mountains and created shockwaves felt hundreds of miles away. Cardos was still stronger, his godlike power exceeding even Omega's combined might. But Omega had something Cardos didn't expect: perfect adaptation. Every time Cardos landed a significant blow, Omega analyzed it, adjusted, and came back with a counter specifically designed to work against that attack. It was Gohan's learning curve combined with Vegeta's battle experience and Piccolo's tactical mind, all operating in perfect harmony. Impressive, Cardos acknowledged after a particularly effective counter sent him crashing through a mountain range. Your integration has progressed significantly. I had good motivation, Omega replied, breathing hard but steady. Let's see how you handle this. Cardos's form blurred, and suddenly there were 5 of him surrounding Omega, not afterimages but actual duplicates, each radiating the same level of destructive power. A god of destruction technique, Cardos explained, his voice coming from all 5 simultaneously. Division without dilution. Can your integrated mind process multiple threats of this caliber? The answer came in the form of action. Omega closed their eyes briefly, their aura shifting to a deeper, more resonant frequency. When their eyes opened, they moved, not with blistering speed but with perfect efficiency. Each movement addressed multiple threats simultaneously. A dodge from one Cardos became a counter to another. A block against one flowed into a sweeping attack that caught 2 more. It wasn't just fighting, it was dimensional chess, with Omega somehow predicting and responding to attacks before they were launched. The Cardos duplicates pressed harder, unleashing destruction energy in coordinated waves. Omega countered with their own innovations, techniques impossible for any individual Z fighter. The Harmony Shield, a defensive technique that combined Piccolo's barriers, Android 18's energy conversion, and Majin Buu's elasticity, absorbed and redirected the destruction energy rather than blocking it. The Prismatic Fist, a close combat technique that cycled through different energy frequencies with each strike, finding and exploiting weaknesses in Cardos's godly defenses. After 10 minutes of increasingly devastating exchanges that reshaped the landscape around them, Cardos suddenly recalled his duplicates, reforming into a single being. He stood amid the devastation, golden blood trickling from a cut above his eye, and smiled. Enough, he said, raising a hand. The test is concluded. Omega remained in fighting stance, wary of tricks. And the verdict? Your integration is approximately 85% complete, Cardos stated with clinical precision. Sufficient for stability, though still short of your potential maximum. Relief washed through Omega. So I pass. You pass, Cardos confirmed, his demeanor softening slightly. The Council will be informed that you no longer pose an imminent danger to universal fabric. That's good to hear. Omega relaxed their stance, the adrenaline of battle fading. However, Cardos continued, there is more you should know. The entity you fought, the Seeker, was not merely gathering information. I know, Omega said grimly. It was collecting consciousness fragments. Absorbing minds. Yes, but for what purpose? Cardos gestured, and a small portal opened, displaying distant galaxies. The Void Lords you defeated weren't destroyed. They were transformed. What you call the Harbinger has evolved into something worse, the Ascended Void. Within the portal, Omega saw it, a massive, swirling darkness consuming stars at an alarming rate. But unlike the Void Lord's previous consumption, this was more precise, almost surgical in its approach. They're not just destroying, Omega realized. They're harvesting. Collecting consciousness itself. Precisely, Cardos nodded. The convergence showed them a new possibility, the combination of minds to create greater power. But where yours was a willing sacrifice, theirs is, not. The implications chilled Omega to their core. How long? Before they reached this sector? 3 months, perhaps 4. Cardos closed the portal. The Council is dividing responsibilities. Some gods will evacuate key populations to secure dimensions. Others will attempt to slow the Ascended Void's advance. And me? Cardos fixed Omega with those golden eyes. You, Omega, have a different purpose. Your unique nature makes you the only entity capable of understanding, and potentially countering, what the Void has become. I barely survived our last encounter, Omega pointed out. And they're stronger now. Which is why you must become stronger as well, Cardos replied. Complete your integration. Push beyond the limitations of your component parts. Omega looked down at their hands that had once belonged to Goku, Vegeta, and the others. Hands that now carried their legacy and responsibility. I'll find a way, they promised. For their sake, and for everyone they protected. Cardos nodded, a hint of respect in his expression. Perhaps you will at that. The Council will contact you soon with further instructions. He turned to leave, then paused. One more thing, Omega. The Seeker's transmission wasn't fully blocked. The Ascended Void now knows about you, specifically about how you were created. That's not good, is it? No, Cardos confirmed. It means you're no longer just a participant in this conflict. You're a target. With that ominous warning, he stepped through a portal and was gone, leaving Omega alone with the weight of an entirely new threat looming on the horizon. News of the coming danger spread quickly among those who needed to know. Within days, representatives from across the multiverse began arriving on Earth, not to fight, but to strategize. The sacred world of the Kais became the headquarters for what amounted to a cosmic war council. Supreme Kais from all 12 universes, gods of destruction, including a surprisingly sober Beerus, angels, and even the Grand Priest himself gathered to discuss the unprecedented threat. Omega, as the only being with direct experience fighting both the original Void Lords and the evolved Seeker, was a central figure in these discussions. The Ascended Void functions differently from its predecessors, Omega explained to the assembled cosmic entities. It's not just consuming reality, it's harvesting consciousness, integrating it into some larger collective. A perversion of the convergence, the Grand Priest noted, his childlike face unusually grave. Using the technique to absorb rather than unify. Can we counter it the same way? Universe a success, Supreme Kai asked. With more convergence entities? The suggestion sent murmurs through the assembly. Omega felt a chill at the implication, more beings sacrificed as they had been. No, they said firmly. The cost is too high, and we don't know if it would even work against an enemy that understands the process. Then what do you suggest? Beerus asked impatiently. We can't exactly reason with a cosmic horror. Omega considered the question carefully, drawing on all aspects of their integrated mind. We need to understand what they're becoming. The seeker mentioned ascended void, not just a name but a state of being. They're evolving toward something. The question is what, Whis interjected. What does a universe-consuming entity evolve into? The answer came from an unexpected source. Universe 10 Supreme Kai, usually quiet and contemplative, stepped forward. There are ancient texts in our universe that speak of a cycle. Reality and void, creation and consumption, locked in eternal dance. Spare us the poetry, Beerus grumbled. It's not poetry, the Kai insisted. It's cosmology. What if the Void Lords aren't just destroyers? What if they're part of a universal cycle we don't yet understand? The Grand Priest's eyes widened with sudden realization. Of course. The missing universes. All attention turned to him. As some of you know, there were once 20 universes, not 12, he explained. The common assumption was that the missing 8 were destroyed in divine conflicts. But what if they weren't destroyed, but transformed? Omega felt the pieces clicking into place. The Void Lords came from those missing universes. They're what happens when a universe ends. Or evolves, the Grand Priest corrected. Nothing truly ends in the cosmic cycle. It changes state. The implications were staggering. They weren't just fighting invaders, they were fighting the next stage in universal evolution, a stage that apparently required harvesting consciousness from the current universal state. This doesn't change our immediate problem, Cardos pointed out. Whether cosmic evolution or malevolent invasion, the ascended void threatens all current existence. Agreed, the Grand Priest nodded. But understanding their nature may be key to countering them. Omega, you've experienced their consciousness directly. What did you sense about their ultimate goal? Omega closed their eyes, recalling the alien thought patterns they'd encountered within Seeker. Completion, they said finally. They seek a state of perfection. Universal consciousness unified under a single will. That's horrifying, Universe 7 Supreme Kai shuddered. But informative, Whis noted. If their goal is forced unification, then perhaps the answer lies in diversity, in the strength that comes from separate but cooperating entities. The discussion continued for hours, plans proposed and discarded, strategies debated. Throughout it all, Omega listened, contributed, but felt increasingly certain that something was missing, some crucial element they weren't seeing. As the council adjourned for the day, Cardos approached Omega privately. You're troubled. Something doesn't fit, Omega admitted. If the Void Lords are just the next stage in cosmic evolution, why are they attacking now? What triggered them? An excellent question, Cardos replied. One I think you should investigate personally. How? Where would I even start? Cardos produced a small crystal that pulsed with dark energy. This contains coordinates to a neutral dimension, one where neither our reality nor the void holds complete sway. A borderland, if you will. And what's there? A being who stands between realities. One who has observed both sides of the cycle. Cardos pressed the crystal into Omega's hand. The Oracle of Null Space. If anyone can fill the gaps in our understanding, it's her. Why tell me this privately? Why not inform the council? Cardos's expression darkened. Politics, even cosmic ones, are rarely straightforward. Some on the council would prevent this meeting if they knew of it. The Oracle sees too much for their comfort. Including things about you? Omega guessed. Including things about all of us, Cardos confirmed. Use the crystal within the next 12 hours. After that, the dimensional alignment will shift, and the path will close. With that cryptic warning, he departed, leaving Omega with yet another difficult decision. The crystal led Omega to a place that defied description, neither fully real nor completely void. Colors existed that had no names, and physical laws seemed more like gentle suggestions than hard rules. At the center of this impossible space sat a being who appeared simultaneously as a young woman, an ancient crone, and a formless shadow, all three aspects visible depending on how Omega focused their perception. The convergence entity, the oracle said, her voice echoing strangely. I've been expecting you. Cardos sent me, Omega explained, trying to adjust to the disorienting environment. Did he? The oracle smiled, or perhaps frowned, her expression shifted as unpredictably as her form. Or did you send yourself, through the long chain of choices that brought your components together? Omega decided to cut through the mysticism. I need information about the ascended void. What they are, where they came from, and how to stop them. Direct, the oracle noted with apparent approval. Very well. What you call the Void Lords began as Supreme Kais, did you know that? What? The revelation stunned Omega. That's impossible. Is it? What are Supreme Kais but beings of pure creation? And what happens when creation reaches its limit? The oracle's form shifted, demonstrating the concept, a vessel filling until it overflowed, changing from containment to release. They, inverted. Omega struggled to understand. All energy seeks balance, the oracle explained. In universes that reached their creative capacity, the Supreme Kais transformed, becoming beings of consumption rather than creation. A natural counterbalance. There's nothing natural about destroying entire universes, Omega objected. Destruction is as natural as creation, the oracle countered. What isn't natural is the acceleration of the cycle. Something has disrupted the cosmic timetable, pushing transformation before its proper moment. What could do that? The oracle's form stabilized briefly, fixing Omega with a penetrating gaze. The same force that created you. Divine intervention where there should have been none. Understanding dawned. The Grand Priest. He authorized the convergence. He has authorized many things beyond his purview, the oracle said, her voice taking on a harder edge. The convergence was merely the latest in a long sequence of manipulations. Why? What purpose would it serve to trigger the Void Lords prematurely? Evolution, the oracle said simply. Forced evolution of the multiverse itself. New forms arising from crisis that would never emerge during peace. The implications were staggering. If true, it meant the cosmic authorities themselves had engineered this catastrophe, had essentially sacrificed entire universes to push reality toward some new state. No, Omega shook their head. That can't be right. The Grand Priest is trying to stop the ascended void, not help it. Is he? The oracle's form shifted again, becoming something older and deeper. Or is he guiding the process, ensuring it unfolds in a particular direction? There is opposition within the divine hierarchy. Not all agree with the methods chosen. Cardos, Omega realized. He's working against the Grand Priest. Working against, working with, such limited concepts for beings who see time as a landscape rather than a line. The oracle waved dismissively. What matters is your role, convergence entity. You are both catalyst and counterbalance. I don't understand. You were created to fight the void, yes. But you are also proof that unification need not come through consumption. You demonstrate another path, willing sacrifice towards something greater, rather than forced absorption. Omega considered this. You're saying I'm some kind of alternative model for cosmic evolution? Precisely, the oracle nodded. The question is whether your example will be followed, or whether the ascended void's path will dominate. How do I make sure it's mine? By completing what you began, the oracle said. Your integration remains partial. To truly represent an alternative path, you must achieve complete harmony, not 85%, not 95%, but total unification of will and purpose. I've been trying, Omega admitted. But something's blocking me. Core aspects that won't fully integrate. Because you're still fighting yourself, the oracle observed. Parts of you cling to their former identities. They must be released, not suppressed, not controlled, but genuinely transcended. How? The oracle rose, her form shifting to pure light. That, I cannot tell you. Each convergence is unique. But know this, when the ascended void comes, and it will come soon, only a fully integrated being will have any hope of representing the alternative path. And if I fail? Then all consciousness will be absorbed into the ascended void, and a new cycle will begin, one without the diversity and choice that defines current existence. The oracle began to fade. Our time ends. The dimensional alignment shifts. Wait. Omega called. You haven't told me how to stop them. The oracle's voice echoed as she disappeared. To defeat the forced unification of all consciousness, you must first unify your own. The answer lies within you, Omega, not as you are, but as you might become. With those cryptic words, both the oracle and the strange dimension vanished, depositing Omega back on Earth as suddenly as they had departed. Bulma found Omega standing at the edge of Capsule Corp's highest balcony that evening, staring at the stars with an unreadable expression. Bad news, she guessed, joining them at the railing. Complicated news, Omega replied. I'm not sure who to trust anymore. They explained what the oracle had revealed, the cosmic manipulation, the accelerated cycle, the competing agendas among the gods themselves. So the Grand Priest might be the villain here? Bulma asked, trying to process the implications. Not a villain exactly, Omega said. More like, a scientist performing an experiment with questionable ethics. He may believe he's working towards some greater good. At the cost of entire universes? Bulma shook her head. That's one hell of a greater good. Cosmic entities have different perspectives, Omega said, unconsciously channeling Whisa's measured tone. To them, universal cycles are as natural as seasons. And where does that leave us mere mortals? Bulma asked, a hint of the old fire in her voice. Just caught in the crossfire of competing gods? The question struck at something deep within Omega, a core truth that resonated with every personality in their composite being. From Goku's innocent belief in protecting the weak to Vegeta's fierce pride in defying godly expectations, from Piccolo's journey from demon to defender to Gohan's commitment to building a better world through understanding. No, Omega said firmly. That leaves us doing what we've always done, finding our own path. Gods may set the stage, but we write our own roles. Bulma smiled, recognizing echoes of her old friends in the declaration. So what's the plan? I need to complete my integration, Omega said. Not just to survive, but because it represents a different possibility, unification through choice, not force. And how do you do that? Bulma asked. You've been trying for weeks. Omega considered the question, drawing on all aspects of their being. What was still holding them back? What final barrier prevented complete integration? The answer came in a moment of clarity. Attachment, they said softly. We're all still holding on to who we were, not just the personalities within me, but you, Chi-Chi, everyone. You look at me and see fragments of those you lost. I look at you and feel echoes of their connections. That's not exactly something we can switch off, Bulma pointed out. We loved them. We still do. I know, Omega nodded. Which is why the final step is the hardest. I need to be recognized and accepted for who I am now, not as pieces of who I was. Understanding dawned in Bulma's eyes. You need us to let them go. To stop looking for Vegeta or Goku or the others in you. And I need to let go too, Omega added. To honor their memories without being bound by their identities. That sounds an awful lot like saying goodbye all over again, Bulma said, voice catching. Not goodbye, Omega corrected gently. Evolution. Growth. The same way Goku wasn't just the child you met on that first adventure, or Vegeta wasn't just the warrior who came to destroy Earth. They changed, became more than their origins. This is just, the next step. Bulma was silent for a long moment, processing. Finally, she nodded. What do you need from us? A ceremony, Omega decided. A chance for everyone to say what needs to be said, to acknowledge the past and embrace the present. Not a funeral, but a rebirth. As Bulma began planning, Omega looked back to the stars, where somewhere beyond sight, the ascended void was approaching. The final confrontation would come soon. The only question was whether they would be ready to represent a different path when it did. The answer lay not in power, but in acceptance, both from within and without. The ceremony took place 3 days later at the lookout, neutral ground that held significance for all the Z fighters. Everyone who had loved them gathered, family, friends, even former enemies who had become allies. One by one, they spoke, not of loss, but of legacy. Chi-Chi recalled Goku's boundless optimism. Bulma spoke of Vegeta's journey from villain to hero. Videl described Gohan's gentle strength. 18 acknowledged Krillin's unwavering heart. As the sun set, painting the lookout in gold and amber, Omega stepped forward to address them all. The warriors you knew made a choice, they said, voice steady and singular. Not just to save the universe, but to become something new. Something that honored all they were while transcending their individual limitations. They looked around at the gathered faces, some tearful, some smiling, all attentive. Today, I ask you to make a similar choice. Not to forget them, never that, but to see me as I am now. Not as fragments of those you lost, but as the being they chose to become. A new protector with a new purpose. Den stepped forward, his role as guardian of Earth giving the moment ceremonial weight. You have proven yourself a defender of this world, Omega. Not because of who you were, but because of who you have chosen to be. One by one, the others came forward, not just to acknowledge Omega, but to genuinely see them as an individual, distinct from the sum of their parts. Pan, in her childish wisdom, put it most simply, you're not my daddy anymore. You're Omega, and that's okay. As the ceremony concluded, something shifted within Omega, a final barrier dissolving as external acceptance mirrored internal integration. Their aura stabilized into a perfect harmony of all their component energies, neither fluctuating nor compartmentalized but truly unified. The change was visible to everyone present. Where before there had been occasional flashes of familiar expressions or mannerisms, now there was something entirely new, a presence that honored its origins while transcending them. It's done, Omega said softly, feeling the completion of what had begun with the convergence. Thank you all. Before anyone could respond, a familiar staff tapped against the lookout's tiles. Whis had appeared, his usual smile replaced with uncharacteristic urgency. It's time, he said simply. The ascended void has arrived. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.